Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to part 2 of the Q&A that I posted earlier last week. We're gonna jump right into this video. If you do want to participate in one of these Q&As, you can make sure to be subscribed to me on this channel, or you can also follow me over on Instagram. I'm gonna put my little handle over here for you guys. My handle is basically the same on every single platform. And with that being said, let's kick off this part 2. So this next question is, how do I stop emotionally eating? And this is a question that I get asked a lot of the time, and also especially as an intuitive eating and eating disorder counselor. This is something that a lot of people come to see me, and this is one of the things that they want to stop doing. They want to stop emotionally eating. But the thing about emotional eating is that it's not always a negative thing. When we hear emotional eating, I think that it has a lot of negative correlations and connotations with it. But emotional eating can also be eating cake at a birthday party, even though you're not hungry because everybody's having cake and it's part of the celebration. That is still emotional eating, but perhaps in a more positive way. So eating to feel better or to get comfort is not necessarily a bad thing. This then becomes tricky if it's the only way that you can feel safety, or the only way that you can feel better, or the only way that you can get comfort. And for the majority of people, we do have other coping skills that provide us with this sense of comfort. Other coping skills that involve comfort can be watching TV, calling somebody that you really care about, spending time with animals, etc. And so the thing that I always tell people is that if you also have other coping skills, then you really don't have much to worry about. If the only way you know how to handle hard or difficult emotions is through using food, and from there I would recommend talking to somebody about what's actually going on, because food might be there to comfort us and it might be the go-to, but if you keep trying to just take food away because we don't want to emotionally eat without actually looking at the root of what the problem is, which is your stress or your trauma or whatever is going on in that beautiful mind of yours that seems to be so uneasy, you cannot remove a coping skill like that without fully understanding why we're reaching for it in the first place. So I would recommend talking to somebody, but if you do talk to a friend, please ask if they are willing to hold that space for you. Just because you have a friend that's a great listener or is like that therapy friend doesn't mean that we can just put all of this on them all the time, okay? So always ask if you want to vent or just lay a bunch of shit on people, you know, just ask if they are willing and if they are okay with that. If not, there are a lot of toll-free numbers that you can call, helplines, etc. I would also recommend potentially talking to your GP about getting a recommendation to maybe see somebody. But first things first, not everybody is privileged or has the opportunity to seek help or pay for help or whatever it might be, or even use free resources. And if that's the case, I would start trying to implement other positive coping skills that are, again, in that realm of safety, of comfort. And at first, they're not gonna feel as good as our other coping skills, but that's okay. It just takes time and it takes practice. But this is just a reminder that emotionally eating is not necessarily a bad thing. It really depends on how we are engaging with it and why. This next question is a little bit more personal to this individual, but I think that we can answer it in a very global way as well. So this question is, I've lost myself in motherhood. How can I find out who I am in this new changed state? So I'm not just going to talk about this through the lens of motherhood, but also just through the lens of different chapters of our lives and going through different changes. And I think the most important thing, whether this is somebody that we are in a relationship with, whether this is a child, whether this is a job that we really care about, whatever it might be, you have to be a person outside of these things as well. And finding that identity can be extremely difficult depending on the people that are in your life, the support around you, so many different things. And so when I think of like, who am I mean, that's a question that I feel like so many of us will never really be able to answer, because there is not one static answer. The person that you are is constantly changing, constantly evolving, and there's so much beauty within that. Some things will always stay the same within you, and some things never will. And I think that that's the beauty about being human, is trying to navigate both of these things. And so when you're thinking of who you are as a person, you gotta have some non-negotiables, some things that make you you, that you will continue to do no matter what. So for me, as you can see behind me, that is to read. And so that is one thing that I would try to prioritize over other things, for example. So what I would start off with is choosing one thing that does make you feel more like you. For some people, especially mothers, I hear a lot of that can be wrapped around in self-care and not getting enough time to care for yourself. So whether that is perhaps treating yourself to something that you used to treat yourself to, like getting your hair done or your nails done or something like that, or even if it's just a day to lie in your bed and watch some Netflix movies and things like that. Oftentimes when we lose ourselves to something, whether we lose ourselves in a relationship or we lose ourselves in motherhood or we lose ourselves in a job, part of us wants to go back to like exactly how things were before, but you can't go back to exactly how things were before. So what parts of that old life do we miss? And what part do we feel kind of unsatisfied with right now? What are we looking for? Right? Are we looking for a sense of community? And if that's the case, then maybe we can pop out to a book club or even to like a mommy and me class or something like that. But finding things that define you outside of these labels that society might put upon us, like mother, is important, but you're not going to do it all at once. So my advice is kind of taking baby steps and also understanding that there are some things that are just going to change as time progresses, and sometimes time is what we need. But doing something small for yourself or something kind for yourself every single day will definitely help us in the long run for sure. But I also think that it's impossible to know who we are at all times. I mean, such an existential question for a good reason, I think. We've got another personal question here, and one that I can relate to as well. And so this question reads, how do you begin rebuilding relationships that have been lost or broken due to mental illness? And the example that this person gave is just lying to their partner throughout the years and things like that. And so one negative consequence that comes with eating disorders is that it does put a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on your relationships, because it puts a lot of stress on you, and a relationship is between you and another individual. So if one individual is feeling a lot of stress, it ain't gonna be good for anybody. There are a lot of relationships in my life that I lost because of my eating disorder. People that I treated in a way that they didn't deserve, people that I lied to, friends that I would kind of ghost or just be very flaky or unreliable with. And some of those friendships I will never get back. And that is the consequence of living with an eating disorder. I did not choose to have an eating disorder. You did not choose to suffer from mental health or perhaps an eating disorder, whatever we are referring to right here. Just because we don't choose something doesn't mean that it will not still have consequences in our life, even though you did nothing really to deserve them. However, there are people in my life that I don't talk to anymore because of that past and because of that history. There are explanations for why we treat people a certain way, right? Our eating disorder or our mental health can be an explanation as to why we do something, but it's not an excuse for treating people in a negative way or in a bad way or lying to people or whatever it might be. There are some relationships, the really, really important ones that are worth saving, where we have these conversations, where we talk about the things that we used to do, where you feel a lot of shame in the things that you don't want to tell them. Those are the important things to tell them. And slowly over time, you have to prove that you are no longer, for example, somebody who lies. And that's going to come with time. Trust is not just rebuilt because we say, hey, I'm not going to do it anymore. The person and the people in your lives need to see that effort over time and need to see it come to fruition. So if we're talking about how to save these relationships, it's open, honest communication. It's telling them exactly what is going on even when we do slip up. It's trying to be as honest with them as much as possible. And other than that, it really is just time and effort on your part. There's nothing that you can do to make somebody forgive you or to make somebody decide that they want to be in your life, because that's not a decision for you. So we can apologize and atone and things like that, but we also just have to kind of put the ball in somebody else's court. And there are people who will forgive you and will come into your life and will be understanding. And there are people that have probably been so lied to or so hurt that they do not want to come back. And that is okay. That's their choice, and we as individuals have to respect that. I know it's not the most hopeful advice, but it is the truth. We have a lot more like personal questions in this Q&A, but I still think that they are very helpful for everybody. So this next question is from a fellow YouTuber, so I'm gonna read it over here. I am a fellow YouTuber and have documented my dieting journey for years, and each time the diets didn't work. I'm what the doctors would call morbidly obese, and I don't believe I'm living in a healthy body. How can I heal my relationship with food without desiring weight loss right off the bat? I find myself still judging myself or mentally restricting, and it's so hard. It is really, really damn hard to step out of the diet culture world when you have been in it for so long. And it's also really hard when the entire time people are telling you that there is something wrong with your body or that it is unhealthy, etc. Is it possible to live in a larger body and be unhealthy? Absolutely. Just like it's possible to live in a larger body and also be healthy, because everybody's body desires something different and has a place that is best for them. And that can be based off of genetics, and it can also be based off of dieting history and yo-yo dieting. The more we diet back and forth, again and again and again and again, the more likely our weight and our set point weight is going to continue to augment and augment and augment. Which means that people who have dieted the most tend to end up and be in larger bodies for the most part. And the reason for this is not because they can't control themselves around food or because they're lazy or any of the other stereotypes that we might hear within a very like diet-centered society. The reason that people's set point weights and just weight in general keeps going up when people do diet is because their body becomes afraid. Their body is like, what if they do this again? What if they take away all the food again? I don't know what to do. And so the fact of the matter is, right now from this question, how to stop thinking about weight loss and things like that. And the thing is at first you might not stop thinking about it, but thinking about something and acting on it are two different things. You might think something, but how you talk to that thought or reframe that thought is the important thing. I want you to think about health goals that are outside the number on a scale, right? Like for example, let's say we want to be able to go on a walk with our dogs in a specific area of our neighborhood, but maybe it's a little bit difficult for us right now. That can be a goal that we work towards as long as it's framed in a very healthy way. And let's say we are able to complete that goal and we don't know if the number on the scale has changed or not. That in of itself would be a health improvement regardless of what the scale says. And so what I would recommend is to stop using the scale, literally get rid of it, throw it out, and stop using it as a measure of your success and start focusing on how you feel. You said in your message, right, I don't think that I am personally in a healthy body. What doesn't feel so healthy for you? If you feel like you want to improve your endurance or you want to improve your flexibility, those are things to focus on that, again, you don't have to focus on what the number on the scale says. Say you want to add more things into your life. I always like to look at health through addition. You can add more things into your life without taking things away. So to go from dieting and using that scale as this kind of validation that you're doing well to not having that scale is going to be a hard shift for you, but it's not an impossible one. The thing is that health is important. That's something that I definitely agree with, but health is not based solely off of what our body looks like. It's based off of our social relationships that we have, our intellectual health, our emotional health, our mental health, and then of course, yes, the variety of things that we might consume. But that's the thing, is it's just about variety. It's just about switching things up. It is never going to be about restriction. There is no pride in restricting yourself, ever. Not now, not today, not next week, not next year. So if you find yourself judging yourself or saying, no, I can't have that, or no, I shouldn't have that, that is a restrictive mindset that is probably going to push us to lose control / binge in some way. The more you try to oppress and control and control and control, the more likely we are to try to break out of that cage with a lot of force. So instead of looking at your body as the thing that is wrong, try your best to focus on actions that align with self-love and self-care. That would be my main recommendation. And seeing you document that might be really inspiring for some of your viewers as well. The next question is also from another creator, and this creator wrote in saying that they are known for making other people feel confident in their body and for inspiring them within their recovery, but then also struggling with their own body image on the daily. And I do want to say that just because you are preaching something and you feel something else, does not mean that what you are preaching is wrong or that you're a liar or anything like that. All that it means is this is content that we need more of, because even the people who create this content are still feeling not good enough in themselves, not good enough in their bodies. A lot of the time when it comes to body image or when it comes to eating disorders or things like that, we have this mentality of like, it's okay for other people, but not for me. Like, it's okay for other people to love their bodies, but not for me to do it. Or it's okay for them to wear that, but not for me. Or it's okay for other people to live in fat bodies, but not for me to do so, etc., etc. And so the thing is why do you see yourself in that different lens? There's clearly some work that we have to do of what's going on behind the surface and why you continuously feel not enough. Are you maybe comparing yourself to other creators? Perhaps, or just people that you see online or in real life. Maybe we're still participating in some restrictive behaviors that cause us to have this spiraling body image when you feel quote unquote out of control or when you are not following said rules. The thing about body image is that it's a very fickle thing, and I don't know a single person in this world who just has great body image 24/7, and that's because it doesn't exist. Perfection doesn't exist, so nobody is going to be 100% of anything in any category ever. And so for me, even though I preach about body confidence and self-love and things like that, most of the time, do I feel positive about myself? Yes, that is the truth. All the time? No, not really. But what I would recommend is talking about it. Talk about when you don't feel so good within yourself. Sometimes seeing this person in front of us online who is always portraying something that is positive and helpful for others in recovery, but maybe neglecting talking about their own struggles, can sometimes even come off as not super authentic. And what I mean by that is you might be afraid to share some of those struggles, but you might be able to find so much more peace through not hiding that anymore. I think that there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves as creators to be this perfect kind of entity, but I mean, perfect for who? Perfect for viewers at home to then begin this comparison to you? Talk about what's going on, talk about those thoughts, and share with your audience what you're going to do to try to get out of them. Maybe sometimes we feel that way and we do nothing about it, but maybe if we actually pull that into your platform or into your life or just into talking to your friends about it or whatever, maybe from there actual change or progress or action can happen. Somebody asked how to stop feeling out of control around food. And the biggest tip that I can give, I'm gonna keep this advice short and sweet, okay? The biggest thing that I can say is that as long as you are trying to control food, food is always going to control you. So let go of control. Let go of your rules. If you're counting calories, it's not helpful. It isn't. And what is he, calorie energy? We're trying to find low energy recipes. Like, whoa there. That sounds very disordered. And obviously that's not coming from this person who wrote the question in, but I know a lot of people when they're talking about like, how do I like let go of this? Like how food controls everything that I do. I wake up, I think about food. I go to bed, I think about food. And that's because you're not allowing yourself to eat freely, to eat what you want, to eat as much as you want, to eat without judgment. And to do all of that, it takes time. But if you don't want food to control you anymore, then you have to stop controlling what you eat. Point blank, period. The next question is how to work through mechanical eating when you do not have any hunger cues. And baby, I know that this is a hard question and my answer is probably not going to be one that you like. How do we manage mechanical eating? Mechanical eating is a structure that is used. I have a whole video about it. I'm also gonna link that below, but it is a structure that's used when you don't have hunger cues. So maybe when we feel grief, when we feel high amounts of stress. And for many people, if you've restricted or just in general don't have a good relationship with food and have dieted in the past, you are not going to have reliable hunger cues. An example as to why your body sends you a message that you're hungry and you restrict and you don't eat. That is why, or an example of how we lose our hunger cues, because your body doesn't want to waste more energy giving you hunger cues if it knows you're not going to listen to them in the first place. So with mechanical eating, how do we eat when we're not hungry? It is all about force, because if you wait till you're hungry, that's using hunger cues. But our hunger cues aren't reliable, so therefore that's why we're using mechanical eating in the first place. Having unreliable hunger cues doesn't mean that you don't ever feel full or hungry. It just means that they are unreliable. With mechanical eating and forcing ourselves to eat when you're not hungry and following that specific structure will lead to your hunger cues coming back, because then your body understands that it's getting that food every single day without you taking it away. So therefore your body's going to trust you more, and then it's going to give you those hunger cues back, and it's going to try again, which means when you feel mental hunger, when you feel extreme hunger, when you feel hunger at all, it's a test from your body to see if you're going to listen. And if you don't, then we're gonna be stuck with the mechanical eating structure for a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer, and it can just keep going. And so if we don't want that to happen, you gotta force yourself to do it. Put on a distracting show and just sit there until it's done. Sit there even if we're crying, even if we have to struggle through it. I promise you that struggling through it is going to be so worth the benefit of what you're gonna get on the outside. And I know it's really hard, but it is so worth it. All right, so this last question is one that I also hear all the time, and it is, I'm scared of overeating. I'm in recovery and I'm scared of overeating. Okay, first things first, I'm gonna tell you something right now. Overeating is not what you're afraid of. You are afraid of the guilt that might come with it, the eating disorder thoughts that might parade you afterwards. You're afraid of maybe feeling overly full, or the discomfort, or what you think you did, maybe that you did something bad. Overeating itself is a very normal experience, and even people who are outside of eating disorder recovery do overeat at times because, again, it's normal. Is it normal to feel overly full after every single meal all the time, every single day? No, that would be something to talk about. But sometimes, every now and then, once a week, feeling overly full or feeling pretty dang stuffed, that is normal and it's okay, and there's nothing wrong about that. You're not a robot, and there's not this perfect place of perfect satiation that you're gonna end at with each meal. So in eating disorder recovery, sometimes you're gonna feel overly full, and sometimes that overly full feeling is literally just normal fullness that seems so foreign to you because you have been so used to restriction in the past however many years. Sometimes regular fullness can be the thing that feels scary, or it can be the thing that makes us feel like we're eating too much, and I promise you that that's not the case. You have so many months or years to make up for, right? You had to force yourself to restrict at some points, just like you're gonna have to force yourself to eat at some points too, and force yourself to eat to a point where you're uncomfortable. Just because you're full doesn't mean that you're satisfied. Just because you're full doesn't mean that you're actually not hungry anymore. Mental hunger is a very big thing in recovery, which means that you can eat, feel physically full, and your body can continue to ask for food because it needs more. So your mind telling you that, hey, you've had enough, and if you eat more, you're overeating, I'm telling you right now that that is a game that the eating disorder can play. Because of course, if you listen, you stop eating. And the eating disorder has a lot to gain from that. But overeating, eating over what amount? There is no limit here, right? There is no calorie limit or energy limit. There is no limit that we must not surpass. And so overeating means nothing. And I know in our mind, we're like, overeating really is a thing. I feel overly full and I do it. And I'm not saying that that's not a real thing or that it doesn't happen within recovery. But what I'm saying is that most of the people who do think that they are eating too much in recovery are almost always the ones who need to be eating even more. Too much is not a decision that your brain just gets to decide. The thing that gets to decide whether or not you've had enough is your body. So if you're thinking about food and thinking about food and thinking about food, your brain is part of your body, and therefore your body is telling you that you are still hungry, no matter what your stomach feels. So I hope that that helps a little bit in understanding different kinds of hungers and things like that in recovery. But I do hope that this was a fun little part 2 Q&A for all of you. I hope that you enjoyed it. If there are other videos that you would like to see soon, then feel free to comment them down below. But I hope that everybody is having a fantastic day and that you do something kind for yourself, okay? Okay. Bye, friends.